There I sat, unaware that I even had problems, and those nice folks were ready to provide solutions. Once again, I feel the need to emphasize that I actually saw this. Every example I offer you on these euphemism topics has been personally observed. And before we get to the food itself, I just want to remind you that you can usually determine a restaurant's price range by noticing how it advertises. If it uses the word cuisine, it'll be expensive. If it mentions food, the prices will be moderate. However, if the word eats is employed, rest assured that any savings you make on the food will be more than offset by high medical expenses. Now, on the subject of food itself, I'm sure you know that certain foods have been altered. And I don't mean genetically, I mean euphemistically. They tried to do it to prunes. The California Prune Board wanted to change the word prunes to dried plums, because research told them that women in their 30s reacted more favorably to the phrase dried plums. California women in their 30s. Does that tell you enough? And the poor prunes were not alone. A long time ago, the same thing happened to garbanzo beans. Apparently, someone thought the word garbanzos sounded too much like a circus act, so they began using the older name, chickpeas. Also at about that time, again for marketing purposes, Chinese gooseberries became kiwi fruit. And since it was obvious feminists would never use an oil derived from rapeseed, we were all introduced to canola oil. And just to round out our meal, the reason Chilean sea bass became so trendy a few years ago was because it was no longer being called Patagonian toothfish. That item needs no comment. And let's not even mention capellini, which became angel hair pasta. Jesus, angel hair. And by the way, who was it that took the perfectly nice word macaroni and started calling it pasta in the first place? That sounds like more of that marketing bullshit. Never underestimate the relentlessness of the marketing people. Because long before we had yuppies, consumer goods had been getting image upgrades from the marketers. For example, seltzer water has variously been known as seltzer, carbonated water, club soda, and finally, enter the yuppies, sparkling water. Sometimes these days the label on the sparkling water says lightly carbonated. Of course, that means they had to find a name for water that wasn't carbonated, and since non-carbonated sounded far too ordinary, the trendier restaurants decided on flat water. There are even a few places that refer to it as still water. It's subtle, but it's clearly a decision that when it comes to beverages, flat may possibly be seen as negative. Never overlook pretentiousness. Pretentiousness is the reason we don't drink water anymore. Instead, we hydrate ourselves. Hey, I'll hydrate myself to that. This is about food advertising language. You're familiar with the words. You hear them all the time. Fresh, natural, hearty, old-fashioned, homemade goodness. In a can. Well, if those are the words they want to use, let's take a look at them. Old-fashioned. When they say old-fashioned, they want us to think about the old days, don't they? The old days. You know, before we had sanitation laws. Before hygiene became popular. Back when E. coli was still considered a condiment. Right next to old-fashioned in the warmth and nostalgia department is homemade. You see it on packages in the supermarket. Homemade flavor. Folks, take my word for this. A food company operating out of a 90-acre processing plant is functionally incapable of producing anything homemade. I don't care if the CEO is living in the basement, wearing an apron and cooking on a hot plate. It's not gonna happen. Same with restaurants. Homemade soup. Once again, doesn't matter how much the 4-foot amphetamine-laced waitress with the bright orange hair smoking the 3 Marlboros reminds you of your dear old mother, the soup is not homemade. Unless the chef and his family are sleeping in the kitchen, and if that's the case, I'm not hungry. Homemade is a myth. You want to know some things that are homemade? Crystal meth, crack cocaine, a pipe bomb full of nails. Now we're talking homemade. If you need further information, check the notes of Timothy McVeigh. Old Tim knew how to cook up little homemade goodies. Sometimes the advertising people realize that homemade sounds too full of shit, so they switch to home style. They'll say something has a home style flavor. Well, whose home are we talking about? Jeffrey Dahmer's? Believe me, folks, there's nothing home style about the boiled head of a Cambodian teenager, even if you sprinkle parsley on the hair and serve it with oven-roasted potatoes. Style is another bullshit word you have to keep an eye on. Anytime you see the word style added to another word, someone is pulling your prick. New York Style Deli. You know why they call it that? Because it's not in New York. That's the only reason. It's probably in bumfuck Egypt. The owner's from Rwanda, and the food tastes like something the Hutus would feed to the Tutsis. Another bogus use of the word style is in family style restaurant. Family style. What that means is that there's an argument going on at every table, and the eldest male is punching the women. You know, family style. Gourmet. Here's another word the advertising sluts have completely wiped their asses with. Everything is gourmet now. Gourmet chicken in a can. Gourmet dining in a cup. Folks, try not to be too fucking stupid, would you? There's no such thing as gourmet coffee, gourmet rolls, or gourmet pizza. Gourmet means one thing. We're going to charge you more. Same thing is true of the word cuisine. The difference between food and cuisine is $60. That's it. They're stealing from you. You want to know some real gourmet food? Toasted snail penises, candied fillet of panda asshole, deep dish duck dick. Now you're talking cuisine. Here's a word only a bullshitter could love. Hearty. Soups are hearty. Breakfast is hearty. Folks, next time you see the word hearty, take a good look at the rest of the label. 600 grams of saturated fat. You know, hearty, as in heart attack. It's a good idea to be wary of any words ending in Y, in particular such words as buttery, lemony, and chocolatey. Anytime marketers add a Y to the name of a food, you can be sure they're yanking your schwanz. Real chocolatey goodness. Translation, no fucking chocolate. And while we're at it, zesty and tangy are not real words that normal people use in conversation. Has anyone ever turned to you in a restaurant and said, "This pork is really zesty, and it's tangy, too"? My comment, "Hey, zesty, I got something tangy for you." And watch out for the word flavored. Lemon-flavored drink. Oh, yeah? Let me know if you spot any trace of a goddamn lemon in there. There's even a pet food that calls itself a chicken-flavored treat. Well, a dog doesn't know what chicken tastes like. He might like it if you give him some, but he's not going to say, "Oh, good, I was hoping we'd have something chicken-flavored again. One grows so tired of beef." The last one of these bullshit food words is natural, and these comments are directed at all you environmental jack-offs out there. The word natural is completely meaningless. Everything is natural. Nature includes everything. It's not just trees and flowers and the northern spotted owl. It's everything in the universe. Untreated raw sewage, polyester, toxic chemical waste, used bandages, monkey shit. It's all perfectly natural. It's just not real good food. But you know something? It is zesty. And it's tangy, too. Bon appetit, consumers. I have a few complaints about retail stores. When did they pass a law that says the people who make my sandwiches have to be wearing gloves? I'm not comfortable with this at all. I don't want glove residue all over my food. It's not sanitary. Who knows where these gloves have been? Let's get back to the practice of human hands making sandwiches for human beings. And we have to stop this tipping people for counter service thing. No one should get a tip for standing erect, moving a few feet to one side, and picking up a muffin. The sign on the pathetic little tin cup says tips would be appreciated. Well, so would some fucking decent service. Let's be honest, folks. There's not a great deal of IQ floating around behind these counters. Maybe in their homelands some of these people might pass for intelligent, but to me, If they live in this country and can't speak English, their IQ plunges around 300 points. I shouldn't have to leave a tip in order to pay for someone's English lessons. And store clerks, you should not be on the phone when you're waiting on me. I'm going to repeat that. You should not be on the phone when you're waiting on me. When I, the customer, walk up to the counter, the phone should be put down, and if it rings while you're waiting on me, let it ring. After 10 rings, pick it up, and without even saying hello, say, "I'm currently waiting on an actual paying customer who has money and has had the courtesy to come into the store to transact business. I will get to you when the store is empty. Stay on the line if you wish, but I may not get to you till sundown." Then smile at me and say, "Where were we?" The in-store customer should always come first.